Hi there! Welcome back to another episode of me explaining my card game, MagEx, the magical delivery themed card game. In my first video, I was explaining what the general concept of the game is, which is delivering different kinds of magical items and trying to do so to earn different kinds of points. I also explained that the two different kind of conceptual parents to this game, granted there are a few others, was Magic the Gathering and Pathfinder. So within Magic the Gathering, you can definitely note that there's definitely a lot of different cards that exist, and clearly it's definitely going to pull from that, but there might be some abilities that'll certainly liken that to that of Magic the Gathering. Granted, this is still a game that has its own independent way of playing. And then in Pathfinder, it's intended to try to get players to feel like, say, they are playing a character, and also ends up having a similar use of actions. But combining these two kind of card games, there are some unique aspects that I end up pulling from this one, along with a higher focus on the items and inventory management. So, the objective of the game is to deliver the items after a series of turns so that we can earn gold points. But in this video, what I'm going to do is go into an explanation of what you're going to be doing on your turn and what your turn looks like. So, what do you do on your turn? So, every single turn that you have two actions available. So similar to that of D&D or Pathfinder, these are actions that you can use to affect the game and influence the game, influence your board. So with an action, you can typically do three things. You can draw a card, you can discard a card, or use action abilities. So when you draw a card, you're going to be drawing from the deck from the center deck that everyone's going to be using. And with said deck, you're going to get a variance of items, as you can see right here. When it comes to discarding items, you can sometimes just get rid of cards that you may not want to have in your inventory. This is where, say, the aspect of your inventory management becomes important. Along with that, you'll notice that if we take a look at some of the items, they will end up having a weight value and a gold value. So in this game, you end up not actually having an explicit hand size, but rather you end up having a weight capacity. So for the standard game, you're going to have a weight capacity of 12. So this means that you could basically have a varying and fluctuating different kind of hand just based on the weight of all the things that you have. So as you see here in this example of a hand, you end up having 3 potions, all of which have 0 weight, but down here you're going to see a sword, which has 2 weight, and you're also going to see a Minotaur's horn, which also has 2 weight. So in this example, this means that you would have a total of 4 weight. So as you end up drawing through a series of cards, you can have different items that will have any kinds of weights or anything like that may affect your hand, and you're going to try and evaluate what might be the best items to hold onto. Now, the third thing I had mentioned, action abilities. Action abilities happen to be abilities of items that allow you to expend an action onto it. There are going to be different kinds of abilities in this game, but for now we're just going to focus on action abilities since we're really just covering what you can do with your actions. So in this case, with your actions you can do a number of things. So for example, with say the sword, on your turn you could use 2 actions to effectively swing the sword, causing target player to discard a card. Or you could even potentially use 1 action to discard the Minotaur horn and then have a player discard target item. So with this, you can basically come up with a different variants of different kinds of potential of what your turn can be just by utilizing your actions and really paying attention to the action economy on your turn. Mind you, with this hand there's definitely more potential things you can get into, but for now we're just going to focus on just making sure we have the concept of what you can do with your actions and what they're able to do. Now, as I had mentioned previously, this is a magical delivery themed card game. So how delivering ends up actually being incorporated into this game is that you end up sitting in 2 different kind of phases on when it comes to your turn. You could either be not delivering or you can be delivering. When the game starts, players will begin by not delivering, where the focus is usually trying to build a hand initially. So some of the things that you have when you're not delivering is at the beginning of your turn, you get a free draw. So this means that on your turn, you could potentially draw a card and then use your 2 actions to draw 2 more items. Or you could potentially get a free draw, have an item that you don't want to use, discard it, and then draw another card. So even with this potential, and what we could say is that you could have drawn a mana potion initially, then use your second action to draw a sword, and maybe you don't want that, and so then you might just discard that. But what you can do, potentially with this hand, is you can use a quick action. A quick action is essentially an action you can do at any point in time and without actually using up a resource. You could basically use this to draw an additional card. So you could still potentially get that Minotaur horn in this hypothetical. Along with getting the free draw at the beginning of your turn, you can also declare if you're going to be delivering at the end of your turn. When you end up declaring that you're going to be delivering, this means that your next turn, you change into a different phase of your turn. So now that we've covered more or less the basic gist of what not delivering does, now we're going to talk about what the phase of delivering is like. So while delivering, you don't get to have that free draw at the beginning of your turn, but what you can start doing is deducting delivery days at the end of your turn. So if you noticed earlier when I had clicked on this character, you may have noticed this 3D here. So typically players will start with 3 days delivery. There are different ways you can modulate the game to try and play it, but as a standard, players will have about 12 carrying capacity and then 3-day deliveries. So once you start delivering, after you've declared delivering on your previous turn, and now that you're in a delivering phase, at the end of your turn, this little counter here will start going down. So, hypothetically, at the end of your turn, after you've done everything you wanted to, your 3 days goes down to 2. Then, at the beginning of your turn, if you happen to have 0 delivery days, you can deliver all the items at the beginning of your turn. That was a little redundant. Anywho, yes, at the beginning of your turn, if you have 0 delivery days, you get to deliver your items. So, using this same hypothetical hand, we end up having these 3 items, the potions that are each have a value of 1 gold. You have the sword that has a value of 1 gold, and you end up having the Minotaur horn that has a value of 2 gold. So with this hand, you would potentially be scoring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a total of 6 points. Now mind you, you can have a hand that could certainly score a lot more than this, and this would probably be considered a more modest hand, but you have different things that you can again do to try to say either advance yourself or even just make the best of the hand that you may have at the moment. So, after you've delivered your item at the beginning of your turn, this means that your turn goes back to not delivering. So your turn goes back to normal to where you get your free draw and you get to do everything over again. So as you play this game, you're basically, as I mentioned earlier, trying to make the best of your hand, score these points to reach a point threshold. At least as of now for my playtesting, I've been setting it as a point threshold of 30. Granted, this does vary depending on how many players are actually present. So, generally speaking, you would say 30 gold points is a pretty decent point for, say, 4 players. Granted, you could play with 2 players. So now going with an example of this hand, let's just go ahead and say whatever we draw, the first item we drew happens to be a mana potion. So that was the free draw at the beginning of my turn. I spend a second action to then get say a health potion, and then I spend my first action to draw a health potion, and then my second action to draw a stamina potion. With this, I could potentially use this one's a quick action ability, not taking up an action, discard it, and then draw this item, the sword. And if I wasn't particularly happy with this hand, I could then use a quick action of the stamina potion, and then gain an additional action, to which that I can then use to say draw or discard a card. And this, since that's the only things I have the ability to do, since I only have one action floating, and I'll use that last action to draw this card. And then, if I really just wanted to advance, like say the time, just so that way, like while not delivering, and I wanted to be able to get a little bit ahead of my opponents, I could then use another quick action to discard that item, and then take my 3 delivery days down to 2. And then at the end of my turn, I could then declare delivery. And then, next turn, I will basically lose that free draw, but I can now actually start progressing when it comes to my days. And since I use that health potion, I'm already a little bit further ahead, which now means I only have 2 more rounds that I have to wait to deduct the delivery days, and then on the 3rd round, at the beginning of my turn, I will score. Now mind you, when it comes to this hand, this may not necessarily be the best strategy, just because I only have the potential of scoring 3 gold, but it doesn't change the fact that I still have a number potential with the other turns in which I can use my actions. I could use my 2 actions to make another player discard a card. I could use 1 action on the Minotaur Horn to just make 1 player discard a card and then draw a new card to try to see if I have more potential for a better hand. Whatever could occur. Nonetheless, players are definitely motivated to try to see what they can do with their turn and try and basically see what might be more advantageous between not delivering and delivering. But key thing to remember is once you begin delivering, you cannot move out of not delivering. You're basically set for doing that, so that's just going to be a series of turns where you're going to lose that free draw, and you have to be able to do the best with the remaining actions you do have. Hopefully this happened to be a relatively sufficient explanation of some of these facets of the card game. Again, I am trying to go through this with one go without doing any edits. So again, apologies for any of the foibles, but hopefully this was at least clear enough. Within the next video, I'm probably going to go over actually discussing the different kinds of abilities and also go into better detail about, say, quick actions versus normal actions, and also explain how other abilities work, along with going into detail about timings. Until then, thanks for watching.